Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Ask the Experts session. My name is Chris Donovan. I am an SD-WAN subject matter expert, and we're here to answer your questions. If you have questions, please include them in the chat, and our moderator will pose them for us. Now I'd like to turn over quickly to Mark, who's my partner in crime in this session, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Mark Burdick, and I'm a principal engineer in the app delivery and security space. So as Chris mentioned, we're glad to have you, and thanks for joining us. Please put your questions in the chat box, the submit a question section, and our moderator, Jill, will bring those questions out to us, and we'll do our best to get you the most detailed answers that we can. So with that, let's get started. Jill, over to you to start bringing some questions out for us.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Just making sure that you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Our first question here is, how does Citrix ADC gather application telemetry? Are there agents deployed on the application servers?
Great question. So the ADC itself is gathering this data by collecting information as the traffic passes through it. So there are no agents that you have to put onto any of your app servers. It's simply being collected by the app delivery controller itself, again, as the traffic passes through. So it's just kind of a natural part of the flow, and it picks up that data, and then it can simply transmit that off to the ADM service to be consumed and to give you some feedback. Anything I missed there, Chris, or did that pretty much cover it?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. Thank you.
Okay. Next question here is, what biometric products do you currently offer?
So this is an interesting question because while Citrix really isn't in the space of producing biometric products themselves, right? So we don't actually produce, like, let's say, for example, a fingerprint reader. We do interact and support a wide variety of, again, I'll use fingerprint readers as the example, that are available on the market. So any sort of product out there that fits in that space that either is, let's say, a direct plugin, right? Maybe it plugs right into the virtual app and desktop environment and is used by the operating system, and the drivers are there and those sorts of things, or maybe it works off of some sort of a protocol mechanism where the device can read the information, transmit it across the wire, that sort of thing. We can interact with that at the ADC and other products. So again, we don't produce the products directly, but we support a very wide variety of different biometric products that are out there. Chris, in your space, being, we've got some common background, but we've deviated a little bit in our specialties of late. Anything more there that maybe is worth mentioning on that area?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't just add a whole lot from the SD-WAN side, but I know that one of the benefits of putting an ADC in front of an application is if you can interface the biometric authentication with ADC, you don't have to support that biometric authentication in the back-end application.
Great.
So it allows you to add biometric authentication applications that we may not always support.
All right, thank you. Hey, Chris, just a little heads up. Your audio is acting a little up. I don't know if that's just on my end. Little static. Okay. Next question here is, how would it impact work from home environment application security and endpoint security?
Yeah.
Could we possibly get a little more info?
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Let's go to the next question. Do you provide solutions that can connect to AWS servers and workspaces?
Yes, absolutely. Our SD-WAN solution today,
it seems Chris is having some audio issues. So I'll ask that question again for you. Do you provide solutions that connect to AWS servers and workspaces?
Yeah, so I'll start the conversation there while Chris is hopefully ironing out the connection issue. So yeah, we absolutely do, and we do in a variety of ways. So as far as things like the workspaces and whatnot, we can connect into those with our app delivery controller, for example, can be placed right into an Azure or an AWS tenant, Google Cloud, right? We can put things right in there. And we can connect the user in through either like a secure reverse proxy. There's VPN communications. We can also do this with our SD-WAN offering. Again, we can do security across that as well to encrypt it and make it work a lot like a VPN, or as you would use a VPN or not. And with that, we can also optimize the traffic. And then we can also, in certain arenas, so I know that the question was around AWS's workspace, but if we look at, let's say, the Azure tenant space with like a Windows Virtual Desktop, we can not only provide access to that natively, we can also do it with a Citrix on top of WVD solution as well. So we can use our high-performing protocol and whatnot to access all that environment as well.
All right, thank you. Next question. What kind of server requirements will I need to assign to get this set up in my environment?
So real quick, do we have Chris back? Okay. Can hear you. Couldn't see you, so I wasn't sure. That's okay. So I think this question is really focused more around the the machine learning pieces, and this is really this is not something that you need to worry about in your environment directly. So as I mentioned in response to a question earlier, the ADC is actively doing the collection of the data. So everything that you need as far as collecting and aggregating all of that sort of information is already there. There's nothing you need to do for your servers. And as far as taking that collected data and kind of churning through it, learning from it, taking action on it, that all happens in our app delivery management service. So there's nothing that you have to allocate, nothing you gotta build out above and beyond having the ADC in place, right? That's the only thing that needs to be there to do all the data collection. And then the other piece of the puzzle is there is a ADM agent that you deploy locally that will intercommunicate with the ADC itself and the ADM service. So it acts as basically a data proxy to get the info from your locally installed and deployed ADCs through that agent and off to the ADM service.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Okay, so we're working through some technical issues. Here we go. We are back. Next question. What kind of training time is required for the machine learning to take effect?
That's another great question, and the wonderful answer is it depends. Different scenarios, different kinds of data will warrant different timelines. So a lot of it comes down to just exactly how much data can be put into the system at a time, right? If you're working with something that is very similar to other things that are out there, like for example, if it's something proxying traffic to a basic website, that sort of data and that sort of traffic pattern is something that is seen in a lot of different places around the world. So the back-end machine learning kind of as a baseline is there from a lot of different places around the world to kind of build the base out, and then it just needs to model for your specific environment. If you're talking about a very particular type of app or something like that, something that works in a very specific way, uses very specific user agents, things like that, that could take a longer period of time, right? So if you're doing something that's fairly common, and it's just a matter of kind of understanding what's unique to your environment, then that sort of thing can happen a little bit more quickly. If it's a little bit more unique, then that's going to probably take a whole lot longer of a period of time.
All right, thank you so much. Our next question, ADC WAF dynamic profiling. Are the default settings for start URL, XSS, and SQL injection generally acceptable?
So this is another very common question. I'm not surprised to see something like this at all. And this is another one that there really isn't a hard and fast answer. Again, your specific website, the specific features, functions, how much traffic, all those kinds of things really factor in. So, the default settings that are in something like the WAF feature, Citrix tries to provide settings that are a good starting point, but letting the system run in learning mode and in profiling mode to kind of figure out what's going on and whatnot, having it come back and say, hey, based on these settings, this is what might have triggered an event. Definitely using that learning mode to understand how those settings may or may not have a direct impact in your environment is absolutely something you want to do. So it's really not a question. It's a very good question. It's a very common one, but it's really not a question that has a very stock specific answer. Again, they're a great place to start, but you really do have to let it model to understand whether or not those settings will work for you. And I don't know, Chris, if you've seen any kind of commonality to where you have to change something or you don't have to change something. For me, it seems like mostly they get tweaked a little.
Yeah, I think most of we just have some pretty good defaults out of the box, so that's a good place to start with them.
Yeah, so great place to start, but probably plan on changing them, right? Because they expect that those won't be the settings you use when it lands in production.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Our next question, can you describe more about how the app protection policy protects against potential malware on a user endpoint? I've seen some documentation that there's no way data presented with the Citrix receiver can be exfiltrated. Do I understand the app protection tech correctly?
So I think there's a couple of different things in there. So we're talking about protecting against malware on the user's endpoint. With the application protection within the workspace environment, there's technology in there that keeps malware from being able to see the key presses or the screen data that is going into that workspace application. So for example, with the app protection turned on, if you try to do a screenshot of a virtual desktop or a virtual app, the screenshot's not able to capture that part of the window. Likewise, if you're typing into that virtual app or that virtual desktop, keyboard capture technologies, all they see is gibberish going into there. So that definitely protects the data in the virtual apps and the virtual desktops from malware on the endpoints. Now, if you're talking about protecting the endpoints from malware, then you'd be looking at things like the secure internet access solution, which is going to filter traffic coming into the endpoint and try to keep malware out that way. Mark, is there anything you would add to that?
I think that I would just kind of say that with the app protection, to just kind of circle back there, one of the things that you get is kind of like you said, you either get just if you're trying to do like screen recording or screen capturing or something like that, that you either get just what looks like random keystrokes. I think you just referred to it as gibberish. You either get that or you just get a complete blacked out screen, right? So one of the things, for example, with our workspace app, during the installation, if you choose to enable that mode, you as the end user you'll see no difference, right? It'll work great. You'll be fine. You can connect to your desktop, your apps, everything's great. But as soon as you join, pick your technology, Teams, Zoom, whatever, right? You join a call and you want to present your screen to somebody, and you want to bring up one of these things in window, right? So you want to bring something up from Workspace as an app or whatever. You're gonna try and present that out, and because you have the protection enabled, nobody's gonna be able to see anything. So you'll just get that completely blacked out screen. So I think that you're kind of understanding that correctly, because the question really is, do I have to do endpoint analysis and check the endpoints? And I wouldn't say that you shouldn't, right? I mean, anything that you do for security is always good. But if you don't do endpoint protection because you're not checking that device for things like malware and things like that, the risk is reduced. So you're doing more, right? So I've always taken the approach that for security, a layered and matrixed approach works best. So I would say still do it if you can, but if you can't, with that protection, you do have other mitigating steps in place.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mark. And if you're just joining us, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit your question in the question box, and Chris and Mark will take the time to answer it. All right, so I'm going to go back to a question that was asked earlier. Chris, I believe this one was right up your alley. How would it impact work from home environment application security and endpoint security?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. So we've got a couple of ways that we address the work from home environment applications and endpoint security. One is our secure internet access solution, which takes the role of protecting that endpoint device. It's going to go and filter your traffic going into and out of the internet, and allows you to keep things like malware off of the machine to begin with. Again, it's all about protecting that endpoint. But then there's also, as we discussed a little bit, the application security. So our Citrix Workspace access, the ability to protect what you're seeing with the virtual applications, the virtual desktops, so that all the corporate data, the key intellectual property stays within the data center, and then the user just accessing it. And then there's other protections around it, like we just discussed with the app protection, that keeps it from being able to be captured by, should there end up being malware on that endpoint, keeps that malware from being able to capture data from there, or a user that's not, doesn't have the best of intentions. So, Mark, is there anything you would add there?
No, I think that was great.
Okay, next question. Do I need to buy the full SASE stack from Citrix?
No, you don't. Of course, I would be lying if I said we wouldn't like you to. But the SASE stack is a number of different components, and if you decide you want to mix and match, you can do that. However, we do believe that by combining the various SASE components that Citrix has together, you'll be able to have a much better, more well-integrated solution.
Yeah, agreed. And one of the things that kind of when I look at the whole movement with SASE and where Gartner has gone with what they've defined and whatnot is, I go back to the .com era, and at that point, most of these different technologies and services and apps and solutions were still evolving, and some of them were evolving very rapidly. And Gartner, like most other entities out there at that point, were advising to buy best of breed, buy point solutions. So if you needed a VPN, go buy the best VPN. If you needed a firewall, go buy the best firewall, right? That was what you did. Well, fast forward 2 decades to where we are now, and what Gartner is saying now is that VPNs are largely on par with each other. Firewalls are largely on par with each other. And yeah, there's some differences. Different products, different vendors do have some different little things, and they can be very useful. But by and large, you can almost see these as, look, I can buy it from anybody. And if you can, then the important piece now is the deep integrations and the deep analytics and understanding of everything going on among them, right? So when you look at what we have that fits into the SASE stack, you look at integrations between, let's say, for example, secure internet access and SD-WAN. Two very different solutions, but we have ways to integrate those very tightly together to do certain things for you. Whereas if you were to buy our SIA and somebody else's SD-WAN or vice versa, that same sort of integration might be harder to achieve. And then more importantly, being able to actually deep dive into the details with the analytics to understand that this user did that on this device at this time, to go there and be able to trace that all the way through the stack gets more and more difficult the more and more vendors that you introduce. So do you need to buy everything from Citrix? No, you do not. Not at all. But the suggestion that's coming out of Gartner at this point is that you should be looking for a vendor that can do as much of what you need as possible, because those deep integrations are going to benefit you.
All right, great, thank you. Our next question, actually SASE as well. Where do I start my SASE deployment?
I mean, that's a great question. It depends on where you're at in your digital transformation, your corporate journey. In some cases, you are in the process of doing a WAN refresh. So start with the SD-WAN. Start with the SD-WAN. Start looking at the connection into the secure internet access or your secure web gateway capabilities from there, and then move on into other aspects of it, like the analytics, like the endpoint, and move on from there. If you're in the middle of doing an endpoint refresh, then start there and then move out to the rest of the environment from there. It's not something you have to do as a big bang that needs to touch every device in your environment all at once. It's something that you can start in one part of the organization and move out from there. You may start with your executives who potentially have the most critical intellectual property on their devices as they're now working from home. Or you might start with the call center, has populations of employees as well. But just take a place to start and then slowly expand it to the rest of the organization. Mark, anything else you would add there?
I was just going to add, Chris, that I think that's really kind of a great way to look at it is, you've got to focus on what matters to you, right? Where is your biggest pain point? Where is your biggest struggle? Where is your biggest concern? Where can your entry point bring the biggest value the quickest? And when you look at the different pieces of a SASE stack and how they fit together and work together, they're kind of integrated in somewhat of a, like, let's call it a circular sort of an image, right? So they all kind of feed into one another, front to back. So pick any point on the circle and start walking, right? And just kind of head in that direction and plug pieces in as you go, and eventually you'll get to a completed circle, which is what you were shooting for. So I think that's really kind of the right way to do it. Is everybody has to decide for themselves where they should start because of what their individual needs are at that moment.
And by the way, right now is probably either the best or the worst time to be making changes to your office network to improve security. Because either there's nobody in the office and you're not planning on having anybody come back, so it's not worth doing, or there's nobody in the office and you can make all the changes you want right now, and it'll be ready to go when users come back, maybe in the next couple months.
Yeah, excellent point.
All right, next question. How do you feel about Intune and AAD integrations for gating access to Citrix?
So from what I've seen, and Chris, I know you've run into some of this stuff too, but what I've seen, the integrations there, generally work pretty well. So if you want to take advantage of Intune, especially if you take that in combination with Citrix Endpoint Management, right? So you do those as a joint solution to manage the devices, and you want to do various different endpoint controls like enforcing password policies or PIN codes or whatever. Those are definitely things that are good. And then as far as Azure AD, I've got customers that have been doing that for as long as I've been here at Citrix, and that's quite a few years. So I don't see really kind of any issues. And the big thing for me with the AAD integration is that my guidance is to always at least consider using a Citrix ADC to do the authentication in your own data center. So you're completely in control of the identity in its entirety, including the password, as well as any additional tokens or other factors that go with it. And then through SAML, you can pass things off to any other service provider. But if you want to do that directly in Azure and do it directly with an AAD backend, that's totally fine too. And what have you come across, Chris? Have you seen anything negative in this arena?
No, I think, again, what you've mentioned in terms of leveraging an ADC to do that authentication. I've got several customers I've worked with that's exactly what they did because they wanted to maintain control. And they've also been able to leverage it to allow other third-party organizations access into their environment. So, in some cases, I've got some healthcare organizations where they've got partners that need to be able to access their environment. So they're able to leverage that Azure Active Directory and do federation that enables them to get those third parties into the network.
All right, great. We have a few more minutes here. So the next question here is, you had a slide that showed the attacks you prevent with machine learning. Are others planned for the future?
Yeah, so definitely going to be looking for anything more that can be developed in that arena. Easy for me to say. So we look at it here at Citrix. We look at machine learning as really kind of being a key thing, right? This is really a very critical tool, and anything that we can do that leverages machine learning, including creating some of these additional things that we can prevent attacks on and things like that, then yes, we're going to explore those. I don't necessarily have details on specific ones that are being explored at the moment, but it is definitely kind of an open-ended development area for us.
All right, and it looks like we have time for one last question. Are there ADC services that require a shared SSL certificate as opposed to unique certificates for each node?
So I think the question, and Chris, maybe the way that this is phrased, maybe this triggers something a little differently for you, but I think the question here is more along the lines of whether or not, let's say in like a cluster or an a prod DR sort of scenario, if you would need to use the same certificate across different appliances versus unique ones. And if that is in fact the context of the question, then I would say that no, we don't have anything that we require certificates to be shared. We do certainly support that. You can put the certs across multiple VIPs or whatever, as long as the FQDN and the name within the cert match with each other. Or you can do unique, right? It's entirely up to you. And again, Chris, if you've got a different context that this means something a little different to you.
No, that's exactly the direction I would have gone there as well. Just, if you, because there are some places where you can't have the same key across multiple devices, particularly talking about hardware security modules. So in that case, you just need to make sure that these certificates that are generated use the same names so that the signing, so they match up with the sites that are being
hosted. Yeah, that's a good point. So you mentioned HSMs, which hardware security modules are something that we had historically used in our FIPS compliant appliances, but it's true also with our newer FIPS certified appliances, which do not use HSMs, where you do have to have distinct certs in different environments because, to your point, those keys are not supposed to be getting transported around.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for taking the time to join us in this Ask the Expert session. Please enjoy the rest of the bootcamp. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.